Also joining us from Kiev is Iuliia Osmolovska. She's a former Ukrainian diplomat and now the director of the Kiev office of GLOBSEC, which is a global think tank committed to enhancing security, prosperity and sustainability in Europe and throughout the world. Thank you so much for joining us, Iuliia. We understand you're about to depart for Lithuania after our interview, so I really do appreciate your time. But can I just reflect on Volodymyr Zelensky's latest comments about Ukraine's bid to join NATO? Because Joe Biden has given an interview to CNN ahead of the summit saying he doesn't think Kiev is ready, given a range of issues, including Ukraine's democratic situation. What's your reaction to that? Because it would seem that Washington, at least, isn't keen for Ukraine to join NATO at this point.
Well, basically, it was somehow expected to hear this position of the United States because we've been hearing from our partners in the NATO member states that these times roles are changed, and whereas in 2008, Germany and France were more reserved when it comes to the perspective for Ukraine's membership in NATO, and the US had been advocating strongly for that. This year, the positions, the roles are changed, and what we need to work much more with the United States to change their position. First. Second, that basically your report in Kiev was right when saying that Ukraine doesn't expect that the membership will come before the war with Russia is over. So what we want to achieve from this summit is a clear commitment and a much more clear path or algorithm, if you wish, that Ukraine start this process of launching these membership negotiations, which will end up sometime in the future. Hopefully, next year's summit in Washington will be more determined on that. But basically, what we need to have much more clear commitments than it was in Bucharest 2008. And we need to see the clear algorithm and the invitation to start this process in Vilnius.
Well, that's right, because as a matter of course, NATO doesn't accept new members in which active conflicts are still going on in those countries. So, as you say, the war in Ukraine must come to an end before it's even admitted into the alliance. But you mentioned the security guarantees that Zelensky has been asking for. What are they exactly? What would he be looking for in terms of this summit in Lithuania and those guarantees?
Yes, to simplify the answer, so basically this is something fixed in legal documents. The assistance that Ukraine has been receiving from the NATO member states in terms of military equipment, enhanced military and defense capabilities of the country, sanctions against Russia, and all this kind of stuff. So basically, we are demanding just a sort of a formal formalization, if you wish, of the existing assistance that the NATO partners are providing to Ukraine to sustain the war and actually to achieve the victory. And what we also need to have in this joint communique of NATO member states after the Vilnius summit is actually not just the commitment that Ukraine will become a NATO member once the security considerations are actually allowing this to happen, or once the war is over, but actually a clear statement that the member states are committed to help Ukraine to win this war, to achieve this victory over Russia, and to help with all the means available. So basically, this would be considered as a sort of upgrade in political commitments of the NATO towards Ukraine.
And we know that so far Ukraine has been quite successful in lobbying the United States and its other allies and getting the military aid that it needs. Most recently on Friday, Washington approved the deployment of controversial weapons, cluster munitions, to Ukraine. More than 100 countries have banned these weapons because of the risks they pose to civilians. Do you think Ukraine should be deploying these weapons, given that so many countries, including members of NATO, are concerned about the danger and the threat that they pose?
It depends on how Ukrainian armed forces and the political leadership will be able to explain how it is going to use these cluster munitions, because as far as we know from military experts, that they're designed actually to achieve a sort of parity, at least on the front line, combating the Russian armed forces. So they're not designed to hurt civilians. And this is the similar process that Ukraine is having when deploying these missiles it receives from the Western partners, like having clear commitment that they are not going to be used on targets that the Western partners are objecting about. So I think that because Russians are using these cluster munitions against Ukraine, and we need to achieve this parity on the front line, on the battlefield. So I think it's a fair solution.
Okay, Iuliia Osmolovska, we will have to leave it there, but best of luck with your meeting in Lithuania, and thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you.